Now, sink into the floor.
Wait.
Sink.
Welcome back, everyone. All right, so a common theme with a lot of my videos is essentially there's a ton of stuff you can do within Slicer. And I know some of you are learning some of the other CAD programs, but if you're starting out and you actually want to modify some of the STL files that you're running into, I'll give you a quick primer. So a lot of the modelers that I like tend to put their logo on there, and while of course I respect all their content, it could be a pain to print on an FDM printer. So right now this is a model, it's Female Guts, and it is by one of my favorite 3D modelers. He actually goes by a few names, but usually it's either Stefan or Michelle Belares. And a lot of times he will actually place on his logo. I'm actually going to flip this around and I'll show you what I mean when it comes to it being a pain to print. So this is actually the base for this model. So let's flip this over for a sec. And I'm just going to slice it. So as we look at the underside of this, we'll get a few errors essentially saying that there's floating parts. And let's say we just want to fill the void that's between the base and of course these holes here. There's a few options. One option, which you'll probably notice from the intro, is essentially you can sync this through the build plate. So if you were to just click on it, you can hit the M key or the move tool, and what you could do is you can create a cut of sorts without having to go through the cut tool. So you could just bring this down and you'll see part of this sort of highlight, and if you go down far enough, we will actually have this portion not show up in the full print. So if we slice again, we will effectively cut anything that's at the bottom of this without having to make a full cut. So I'll show you a way where we can actually fill this. So let's flip this on its base. And what we can do here, actually let's make sure this is centered. So we're gonna right click, center, all right. Pick an empty spot. We will then go to add a primitive. We will add a cylinder since this is cylinder. And we're gonna enlarge this. So scale with the S key, and we're going to bring this over, and I'm going to look at the bottom, and we pretty much just have to fill this up and fill it until we have all the edges. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect as long as it fills the edges. You don't even have to go all the way to the end. All right, so now that we have that, we're going to use the scale. So bring this down. Now this model is unique in that you essentially have holes for the feet. So these little cutouts. So we're going to drop that down. And I'm actually going to drop it down until I stop seeing it move. So this is coming up, this is going down. And it actually stops moving right about here. All right. So what we'll do is we'll actually combine this. So again, click on one, hold control, click on the other. You can then right click, then assemble. Now they're both together. And we will slice this. And you can see the difference between the slice model with the flat base and the one that has just the logo. Now another thing we can do is actually create a void within this, or a hole. We can right click on this, we can add a negative part, we'll go a cylinder again. And of course we can enlarge this. And I'm just going to center that. And same rules apply. You can see it sort of penetrating that. Anything below the build plate won't really matter. So we will stretch this about yay big. And we're just going to bring this down. So we're going to hit the M, bring it down, and we're going to actually pay attention to the holes where the feet go. And I don't know if you can see it here. I'll move it a little closer. So that shadow area, and we're just going to keep going lower and lower and right about there. All right, so we will, all this won't matter, so let's slice this. All right, so we'll look at the underside, and we've now just created a giant hole where the logo was, and you actually should be saving some filament. Now this would actually be a crazy thing to print without supports, so obviously just make sure it makes sense. But this is just for illustrative purposes. I'll actually print these out and I'll show you what it looks like. And we're going to go through a different model, and I'll go through those steps again. Okay, so this is a really neat dice box by Mythic Roll. And while I love the logo, it actually does kind of get in the way when you want to put in your dice. So I'll show you what it looks like if you were just to slice it as is. And normally I wouldn't mind about logos that are hidden away like this, but this logo actually sticks out a little bit, as you can see. So let's say we wanted to effectively erase that. So we can actually use our negative parts. So let's do a cube. All right, now you can go by measurements. I'm just going to eyeball all of this. All right, so let's stretch this out to about yay big. Make this about yay size, and we're going to slide this over until we've effectively covered up the logo. And I don't really want to eat through too much of the sides. All right, now you got to make sure you're not eating into the bottom, otherwise you're gonna have a hole. So let's slice this. I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so we just put a hole in the box. We don't want that, so we're just gonna raise up that negative part. All right, so click on that, hit the M key, bring this up just a bit, and we can look at it from here. All right, let's slice. Okay, now I ate a little chunk out of this. Now I could probably make it flush, but you know what I say, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. And I could probably shrink this a bit since it's showing into the side, or at least slide it over. So let's shrink this a little more. And probably slide it over a smidge. Slice. All right, so as long as we didn't puncture all the way through to the bottom, we could print this, and logo's gone. You get a little bit more space inside of this. Now this can work on a lot of different things. So we've been using this on things on the bottom of stuff, inside of stuff. Of course, you can always angle things as well. So let's actually find a different model and give it another shot. All right, so here's another example. So like the katana or collapsing katana aesthetic, and within this one, this kind of detracts from the look. Um, and let's say we wanted to get rid of that. We're actually going to slice it real fast just to see how far this logo goes into the model. Okay, and it goes in, a couple layers. So there's a few things we can do. If we try to do a negative part, it would get really close to where, it's only a few layers. It gets really close to the top of this and where the print kind of ends with the blade. So let's actually flip this. All right, so instead of using a negative part, let's use just a normal primitive to fill this in. So we'll do a cylinder. And we have to start thinking in 3D shapes. So even though this is rounded, we can make it an oval just by squishing it. I'm actually going to make this large first, and then we'll close in that gap. Actually, let's right click and center that. And we'll bring this closer. Slide that over. Fill that in. All right, so we'll just select them both. Since these are the only two here, I'm just going to hit Control A, and then we will assemble it. And we've effectively should have made that flush. So let's slice it. All right, and we're getting an error only because this is supposed to be printed the other way, but we can actually make this a little wider, but that would work in the sense that you would sort of clean up that logo. Okay, so I'm going to print out a few of these. Not the blade, I actually have some other stuff I need to print. But you get the idea as far as how you can use the build plate essentially as either a cut tool or a way to sort of hide part of a model. So you can just grab this, bring it down, and again, anything below here will not print, but everything above will. We've gone over negative parts where you can essentially subtract from a model. So if you had like a logo, lettering, that type of thing, you can effectively sort of cut into a model. And then of course you have the normal primitive, so you can sort of fill in a hole.